je parle super bien anglais.
D'accord.
Non seulement j'ai un accent parfait, mais j'ai aussi un vocabulaire incroyable. Depuis que je suis adolescent, j'essaye d'imiter la reine d'Angleterre.
Aujourd'hui, on parle de l'anglais de David Castello-Lopez. Vous le connaissez sûrement.
Je possède des thunes, je suis à l'aise financièrement, je ne me plains pas.
Est-ce qu'il a raison d'être aussi confiant? Est-ce qu'il parle comme la reine d'Angleterre? On va voir ça. Et restez jusqu'à la fin pour connaître sa note sur. Well, for somebody who apparently speaks amazing English, it was kind of hard to find an interview or a conversation where he really speaks English for an extended period of time, but I have found one. Here I have an interview from France 24. All right, so let's have a look.
David Castello-Lopez is with me here on set. It's quite difficult to describe the show. I was watching bits of it yesterday afternoon because it's not just stand-up.
Exactly, I weave video jokes inside the regular stand-up.
He's really good. I know he told us that he was good, but I just didn't expect it, you know?
It's a reflection on the theme of authenticity, and there's a lot of explanatory journalism, I could say, inside it, and even maybe a little bit of philosophy, I hope. And then a lot of jokes.
Wow. Look, my first impression is that I am very impressed. He has really fantastic pronunciation, very much more British sounding. Does he sound like the Queen though? So just a bit of a side note, in the UK, I'm sure you know that there are so many diverse accents, but there is a type of pronunciation which is called received pronunciation, or RP. It's sort of what you might hear on the BBC. But the Queen actually didn't use modern RP. She spoke a much older form of RP that almost nobody speaks these days.
I keep mine in here. For later.
That's why it's kind of almost funny or interesting that David wants to try and speak like her, because it does have this really posh sound to it. At the beginning, he did say exactly.
Exactly.
Instead of saying exactly, and this definitely is quite reminiscent of the Queen's English. And in general, his pronunciation is really nice. It's really clear. For example, I think he did a really good job at clearly pronouncing a lot of consonants, especially the T. I heard him talk about authenticity.
Authenticity.
So he made a nice effort to clearly pronounce those T's. But interestingly here, when he said this word, he said
explanatory.
Explanatory, not explanatory. And in general, I would say that explanatory is more the American way of pronouncing these words that end in O-R-Y, and that the British English pronunciation is more explanatory. We see it also with words like mandatory or mandatory, laboratory or laboratory. All right, let's continue.
You even laugh, don't you, about what it might have been like if Hitler was Portuguese.
Exactly, if the Nazis had been Portuguese, especially because of the accent. There's a rough edge to the German accent that is kind of lacking in Portuguese, and just to change the accent of the Nazis, I think makes for a rather nice joke.
Yeah, I think he's doing quite a good job at really using this RP pronunciation, and even just some of the vocabulary he's using, like rather. It makes for a rather nice joke. It sounds much more British than, for example, American.
It doesn't quite work if you play it to an English audience.
Yes.
Okay, so here David has said yes, which is not a crime. However, I have it on good authority that the Queen would have said yes. I remember watching an interview of the cast of The Crown. They were talking about how they could get into this Queen's English accent, and it was to pronounce the word yes as though they were saying ears.
Ears.
I'm sorry. Say it as the Queen, please.
Ears.
Ears.
So, unfortunately, David, he stumbled on the word yes. I think we can forgive him for that. All right.
But, I mean, it's quite near the knuckle, isn't it, some of it?
What do you mean by near the...
Near the knuckle, it's quite, you know, I mean, you're sort of pushing the boundaries, I suppose.
I really like what I just saw here from David. The interviewer has used a kind of specific expression, to be honest. I've not heard this expression for some time, to say that something is near the knuckle. You know, it's so close to being vulgar, close to being offensive, and it doesn't surprise me that perhaps David has never heard this expression, but the way that he asks for clarification, I think, is so nice. What do you mean by near the knuckle? What do you mean by that? I really like that. I feel like it was such a nice way of asking for clarification, but without interrupting the flow of the conversation. And, without saying, oh, sorry, I didn't understand. My English is not good. What a great thing that we can all take away from David. So smooth. What do you mean by that? Nice. Well, before we go any further, of course, I'm in the comments. What's in here? I've only ever seen him do things in French. His English is shockingly good, almost unnerving. I agree. Unnerving? Sure, why not? He's not that fluent in English. What do you want from him? What more could you ask for? Yeah, he is fluent in English. Sorry. He puts on a posh English accent for this interview, but I've heard him interview Americans, and then he has an American accent. Well, welcome to the club. It's called code switching, and some of us do it because we want to make people around us feel good about themselves. Yes, it happens. Sometimes when some of us speak to people with an American accent, we start to use American vocabulary, some American pronunciation, and then we speak to English people, It happens to the best of us.
And that works as well with the authenticity banner. Another bit, you're targeting or looking at marketeers.
I can see he's really frowning a lot. When the interviewer starts to speak or ask him a question, you see a lot of classic thing that I think many of us do when we're speaking to someone in a foreign language, and we're really making a conscious effort to listen and try and concentrate. So I think that's a little bit of a window into perhaps the fact that David is still making an effort. He speaks very, very well, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't still have to make an effort, and he's really. And I personally always try to be aware of this when I'm speaking to someone, if English is perhaps not their native language. When they start frowning at me, I kind of take that as a sign maybe to slow down or to speak more clearly, because it's like an unconscious signal that someone is really maybe struggling or making an effort to listen.
I went to the bottom of this because I found one of the persons that's actually on one of the packages, someone who deals with fish, and this is something I very much enjoyed finding this person, and the thing I wanted to do is just to convey that joy of just finding him.
All right, so here again, David has used the word exactly, but he's gone back to, I guess, more of an RP accent and said exactly instead of exactly, like the Queen. And he uses a really, really nice expression. He just makes one tiny little error with it. He says,
I went to the bottom of this.
The expression itself is to get to the bottom of something. So here he should have said, I got to the bottom of this, meaning that he found out or he solved the problem.
So where did the idea come from then to make that the theme of it, if you like, authenticity?
I think I've been thinking about authenticity quite a lot in the last 10 years, and also it's a good unifying.
Ooh. Wow, okay. David has very good pronunciation, so much so that he can hear himself slipping. Happens to me too in French. Sometimes things come out of my mouth and I can hear it. I think, oh no. Sometimes our ears are better than our mouths. And here I heard David, he almost said good, which is something I often hear from French speakers. Often I hear a bit of an overcompensation with this oo sound for food, and David, he almost did it. He almost said good, but he stopped himself. Let's hear it again.
Also, it's a good.
Aha, see? So he stopped himself and he went back and he pronounced it correctly. It's a good. So to practice this difference, you can try saying, I like good food.
It's a very human thing. You never ask yourself if a salmon is sincere.
Fantastic pronunciation. He pronounced this word perfectly. He said
salmon.
Salmon. I love that. It's not a salmon. It's a salmon. Well done, David. Love it.
You can make jokes and be a journalist at the same time. I was even a journalist for some time at France 24.
Oh, right. Okay. I didn't know that.
In the late 2000s.
Right near the beginning.
Okay. I really like the way here that David has said in the late 2000s, but I will just share with you that one time I worked at a school and one of the head teachers had included in one of our lessons that you absolutely cannot say in the early 2000s, in the late 2000s, and that you should say in the early 21st century. And I thought, yikes, I definitely say that. Yeah, so I don't know. I've been told it's not correct, but I say it. So what were you doing in the late 2000s? let me know.
Because you're not sort of necessarily after a laugh a minute, are you? There's
Exactly.
a bit more...
I prefer a better laugh than lots of laughs. There are laughs that you get on stage and that you're not proud of.
Whoa, okay. Okay, I can see here that perhaps he's lost his grip on his RP here. I just heard like a really big slip into what I would very much describe as an American accent. So he said, I prefer a better laugh than lots of laughs. And pretty much this entire sentence is said with an American accent instead of saying, I prefer a better laugh than lots of laughs. Of course, David has admitted to us that he's really making an effort to have a specific type of accent, which is, you know, fantastic if that's your choice. But it is so difficult. It's so difficult when, you know, English is so varied and we see so many different types of English all the time, particularly American English, which is so strong in like popular culture, that kind of thing.
But of course, at the beginning, there was not, the little skit was not part of it. It was just me singing a song in Arabic, and I learned a bit of Arabic to be able to do it. But of course, I was scared, and my girlfriend particularly said, well, you're gonna get yourself killed. And I didn't get killed, and I get good laughs with this particular bit, so I think it's...
Another great response from David. I really love here that he pronounced this word correctly. He said Arabic, with the emphasis on the first syllable. What I often hear from French speakers is Arabic. Yeah, when we talk about the language, we stress the first syllable, Arabic, and perhaps it's easy to confuse it with Arabian, the adjective that we use, I suppose, more to refer to the region. So Arabian with a stress on the second syllable, but Arabic, stress on the first syllable. I did hear, gosh, it's so hard to find any mistakes here, but I did hear a little slip here. I heard a little bit of this overcompensation of the G. He said singing.
Singing.
No need to push the G, just singing.
What's that like, going out on tour and performing in front of people? You know, you might have been used to doing it behind a microphone or behind a camera, but now you've got a live audience.
It's better in a way because you get the laughs that I might have gotten in my videos. You're not here to witness them, and now I'm witnessing them. Sorry. There's a good thing with the fact that doing things that are on stage that you can always work on the piece. When you're a journalist, you file the piece and it's over, and there's no really going back to making it better. The show, I'm always improving it, and that's a big joy.
So I think I have discovered David's kryptonite in English. One word that exposes him, and that is the word better. Yeah, it really trips him up. He often says things like better, and then it's almost like that word is kind of like a gateway, and then I heard him, for example, start saying work. Yeah, it makes him kind of lose his grip a bit on his beautiful, I shouldn't say beautiful, all accents are beautiful, let's be honest, but his RP accent that you can see he's made a really big effort to perfect. Yeah, you can just sort of hear him sort of just coming out a little bit, and then he sort of starts to stammer a little bit.
Witnessing them, sorry.
Which happens to, you know, everybody. We all sometimes struggle to get a word out. Yeah, okay, maybe just like one last point here. We heard that it's a big joy.
Big joy.
Yeah, I guess a big joy doesn't really feel natural. Maybe it's a great joy, or it brings me so much joy. A big joy. I don't think so. All right, well, it's time to discuss what I thought of David's English. First and foremost, the big question. Does he sound like Queen Elizabeth II? No.
Please.
Boo.
However, he's sort of decided that he wants to try and speak like the Queen of England. He's not quite succeeded, but it has meant that he has succeeded in having quite a good RP accent. He not only has really good pronunciation, but his intonation and flow are really natural. I don't think I heard any intonation mistakes, and that's a pretty good achievement from a non-native English speaker. Occasionally, he slipped out of, for example, his RP accent. He never once, in my opinion, slipped into a French-sounding accent. He always slipped into a different kind of native accent, and that's really impressive. Okay, so what's my grade for David's English? I'm gonna be really honest, I really hesitated between an 18 and a 19 for David, because I'm so aware that I'm basing this just off one interview that he's been able to prepare for. But based off this one interview, which I think was really impressive, I'm going to give David a 19 out of 20. However, I'm curious what you all think as well. So I have made a poll on my channel as well. I'll link it in the comments or in the description. Please feel free to share your opinion. Do you agree with my grade? Do you think he should have received a perfect 20, 18, less than that? I'm really curious to know. As always, I have a free PDF which summarizes all of the comments I've made here today. You can download it from the description. It's free, it's for you. If there's anyone else whose English you'd like me to analyze, please let me know in the comments. I'll see you again soon. Bye!